Life gets easier without a purpose. Alan Watts' shocking secret. Have you ever wondered why we're so obsessed with finding a purpose? Why every self-help book, every motivational speaker, every productivity guru keeps telling you to find your why? It's like we've all silently agreed that unless life is moving towards some goal, it's meaningless. That unless you can point to a reason for your existence, you're just wasting space. But what if that's all backwards? What if the very thing that's making your life feel heavy, anxious, and incomplete is this desperate search for a purpose? Alan Watts, the great philosopher who dared to question the deepest assumptions of Western thinking, once said something shocking: the meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious and so simple. And yet, everybody rushes around in a great panic, as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. Yet that line hits hard. Because we are rushing, we're panicking. We're constantly measuring ourselves against some invisible benchmark of purpose, progress, and productivity. But what if life isn't a problem to solve, but an experience to live? What if the whole idea of purpose is just another illusion, another trick of language that has us chasing our own tails?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
Let's unpack that. Why do we even want a purpose? For most of us, it's because we're uncomfortable with the idea of simply being. We feel we need to do something, become something, achieve something to justify our existence. We're terrified of the silence that arises when we stop striving. So we fill it with goals, missions, and visions. We say, I want to make an impact, or I want to change the world, or I'm here for a reason. But have you ever stopped to ask, who told you that you need a reason? Why isn't being alive, breathing, seeing, feeling enough? This obsession with purpose is rooted in a deep cultural illusion that life is a journey with a destination. We're trained to think of life as a story arc. You start somewhere, you struggle, and if you work hard enough, you reach the climax: success, enlightenment, peace. But Watts said that's not how life works. Life is more like music. The point of a song isn't to get to the end. If it were, the best songs would be the shortest. No, the point is to play, to feel, to dance with it. Likewise, the point of life isn't to reach the end with a neatly wrapped purpose. It's to live it fully, moment by moment, without needing it to mean something beyond itself. And here's the paradox: the more you chase purpose, the more disconnected you feel. You start to believe that your worth is tied to your productivity, and that your time is only valuable if it's moving you closer to a goal, that your happiness is always somewhere in the future. But the truth is, the future doesn't exist. It's an idea, a possibility. All you ever have is this moment. And when you're constantly trying to extract a purpose from it, you miss the miracle of its presence. So what happens if we drop the need for a purpose? Do we become lazy? Nihilistic? Lost? Actually, no. Something incredible happens. We become free. Free to explore, to play, to enjoy, to feel. And free to be human without the pressure of being heroic. Free to rest without guilt. Free to act without needing a grand justification. And in that freedom, life starts to unfold in a way that is spontaneous, creative, and deeply alive. Watts often pointed out that clouds don't have a purpose, birds don't fly for a reason, flowers don't bloom to impress anyone, but they just are. And in their being they are beautiful, whole, complete. Maybe we're not that different. Maybe our true nature isn't to strive endlessly towards some abstract goal, but to laugh, to cry, to pray, to love, to create, to rest, to breathe. And when we live that way, without clinging to purpose, we discover something surprising. Life doesn't become emptier, it becomes lighter, more joyful, more real. So here's the question: what would your life feel like if you stopped trying to justify it? If you stopped trying to make it mean something and just let it be? Could it be that the very thing you've been searching for, peace, ease, contentment, has been here all along, hidden behind the exhausting chase for a purpose? Alan Watts invites us to stop running, to sit, to breathe, to listen, to realize that maybe, just maybe, life gets easier without a purpose. The joy of pointlessness, why doing something just because, is the highest form of freedom. Think about the last time you did something just because. Not because it made money, not because it helped your resume, not because it was healthy, impressive, or efficient. Just because it felt good, just because it was beautiful. Maybe it was doodling on a napkin, dancing in your room, lying on the grass, staring at the sky, or laughing so hard your stomach hurt. Now ask yourself, how often do you let yourself live like that? We've been conditioned to believe that every action must have a clear outcome, a measurable result, a purpose. We're taught to ask, what's the point? Before we even begin. But Alan Watts flipped that question on its head. He argued that the point of life is not to get somewhere, but to be here. And in being here fully, without needing a reason, we rediscover the childlike joy we've buried under layers of adult seriousness. Think about it, children don't play to become Olympic athletes. They don't draw because someone might buy their art. They don't sing to get a record deal. They do these things because, why not? Because life feels good when it's lived that way. That's the joy of pointlessness. And it's not meaningless, it's freedom. Because when you do something without needing it to validate you, you're finally free from the tyranny of usefulness. You're no longer a machine built to produce outcomes. You're a being, alive in the moment, immersed in the mystery of existence. And ironically, that's when the most meaningful experiences arise, not when you're chasing them, but when you've stopped needing them to justify your time here. Watts pointed out that the whole universe is like a piece of music. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't need to. Its value is in the unfolding, in the harmony, in the play. Imagine watching a sunset and asking, but what's the goal of this? You'd miss the whole point. A sunset doesn't need a purpose to be profound. It just is. And maybe our lives are the same way. Maybe the most profound things we do are the ones we can't explain in terms of productivity or utility. But here's the problem. Our culture doesn't reward this. We live in a world that monetizes everything. If you're good at something, people say you should sell that. If you enjoy something, they say you should turn that into a side hustle. We've even turned rest into a strategy. Self-care becomes something you do so you can be more productive tomorrow. But Watts warned us, when everything becomes a means to an end, nothing is sacred anymore. Nothing is allowed to just be. And when nothing can just be, you can't just be either. So what if you gave yourself permission to do something completely pointless today? To go for a walk with no destination, to write something no one will read, and to cook a meal that no one else will eat? What if you did it just for the joy of it? Not to get better, not to improve, not to win, just to feel alive. Could it be that this is where the real meaning of life hides, not in the grand pursuit of purpose, but in the quiet moments of play? And here's the deeper truth. When you let go of purpose, you don't become lost. You become found. You find yourself in the texture of life, in the small details, in the unrepeatable beauty of now. You laugh more. You stress less. You stop trying to squeeze value out of every second, and you start living in those seconds, fully, freely. So I want to ask you something radical. What would your life look like if you stopped trying to make everything matter? If you trusted that some of the most valuable experiences are the ones that defy logic, productivity, or purpose? Could it be that the moment you stop trying to be significant, you finally touch something truly sacred? Watts would say that the universe is playing a game of hide and seek with itself. And you, yes, you are part of that play. Not a problem to solve, not a project to improve, but a moment of cosmic art. Maybe you don't have to matter. Maybe it's enough to exist. The myth of the hero, why you don't need to be great to be whole. We grow up on stories of heroes. They're everywhere: books, movies, religions, history books. The narrative is always the same. A person starts off ordinary, faces a challenge, overcomes adversity, and becomes extraordinary. And somewhere along the way, we internalize this story as the blueprint for our own lives. We start to believe that unless we overcome something massive, unless we conquer, save, build, or achieve something truly great, we don't matter. But Alan Watts challenges this myth at its very core. He suggests that the need to be a hero, to be extraordinary, to define our life by some grand arc, is precisely what makes us feel unworthy in the first place. Why? Because the myth of the hero is rooted in lack. It begins with the assumption that you, as you are now, are not enough, that you must become more, that your current self is a stepping stone to a future, better self. And so, we live in this constant state of becoming. We rarely allow ourselves to just be. Because if we did, we fear we'd be wasting our potential, or worse, falling behind in the race we imagine everyone else is winning. But here's the question nobody asks: what if there is no race? What if there's nothing to win? Watts often drew attention to this illusion of self-improvement as a trap. He said, trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth. The harder you try to become someone else, the further you get from who you already are. And when you live your life as if you're in a movie, constantly trying to make your story epic, you start to treat the present moment as a means to an end. Your life becomes a waiting room for significance. You're always preparing for the big scene, the climax, the moment you'll finally be important. But what if that moment never comes? Or worse, what if it already did, and you missed it because you were too busy trying to be someone else? The myth of the hero also isolates us. It separates us from others by turning life into a competition. If you're trying to be great, then everyone else becomes a potential threat to your greatness. You compare, you compete, you measure your worth against others. But in doing so, you forget the deeper truth: you are not a character in a movie. You are a living, breathing part of life itself. And life isn't asking you to be great. It's asking you to be real. Ask yourself honestly, who are you when you stop performing? When there's no audience, no applause, no reward? Can you still feel whole, even if no one ever calls you extraordinary? Watts would say yes. Because wholeness isn't something you earn. It's something you remember. It's your natural state, hidden beneath layers of social conditioning and fear. You don't need to become a hero to be worthy. You were born worthy. This doesn't mean you can't do beautiful, brave, or challenging things. It means you don't have to do them to prove anything. You can act from love instead of lack. You can create because it brings you joy, not because it earns you praise. You can help others not to be a savior, but because compassion is part of who you are. And when you live like that, you actually become far more impactful because your actions are rooted in authenticity, not ego. You let go of the myth. Let go of the pressure to leave a legacy, to be remembered, to make something of yourself. You are something right now, without the accolades, without the story, without the struggle. You are not the hero of a movie. You are the universe in human form, breathing, feeling, existing in this moment. And that's not just enough, it's sacred. Letting go of the ending, how surrendering the destination gives you back your life. We are obsessed with endings, with where it all leads. We want closure, resolution, a final chapter that makes sense of everything that came before. It's why we demand happy endings in movies, crave certainty in relationships, and seek clarity in careers. We don't just want to live, we want to know where it's all going. But Alan Watts, with his signature clarity, warned us, this obsession with the destination is what robs us of the fullness of life itself. The moment we fixate on where we're headed, we stop being where we are. Life, he said, is not a journey with a fixed endpoint. It's a dance, a play, a wave. And none of those things are about arriving, they're about being in motion. Imagine watching a dancer who only cared about finishing the dance, or listening to a song just for the last note. It's absurd, but isn't that what many of us do with our lives? We rush through days, months, years, always chasing the next milestone: graduation, promotion, marriage, retirement, believing that then we'll finally be complete. But what if that moment never arrives? Or worse, what if it does, and it doesn't feel like you thought it would? The truth is, the moment you surrender the need to get somewhere, you begin to actually arrive. Not in the future, but right here. This breath, this thought, this feeling. And suddenly, life becomes rich again. Not because everything is perfect, but because you're no longer missing it. You're not waiting for life to start, you realize it already has. Letting go of the ending also frees you from the crushing weight of expectation. But when you live for a destination, every detour feels like failure. Every misstep becomes a crisis. But when you embrace the idea that the journey itself is the point, those same moments become part of the dance. The heartbreak, the confusion, the boredom, they're not mistakes. They're movements in the music. And when you stay present with them, without resistance, they reveal their own kind of beauty. Ask yourself, what if there's nowhere to get to? What if this right now is it? Would you still keep running? Would you still trade your presence for a promise? Watts believed that the universe isn't moving toward a goal. It's unfolding spontaneously, moment by moment. And you, as part of it, don't need to steer it to a finish line. You just need to be with it as it moves through you. So stop waiting for the ending to make sense of the story. The story makes sense because you're living it, not because it has a moral or a climax or a legacy. Life gets easier not when you figure everything out, but when you let go of the need to. The destination isn't ahead of you. It's within you. It's always been. And maybe, just maybe, That's Alan Watts' most shocking secret. When you stop trying to find the meaning of life, you start to feel it. Let go and live.